The sun dips low, painting the ridgeline in shades of bruised purple and soft orange. Up here, alone, the world shrinks to the rhythm of your own breath and the crunch of leaves underfoot. You're standing on the Appalachian Trail, a footpath stretching over 2,000 miles from the mountains of Georgia to the summit of Katahdin in Maine. A simple white blaze, painted on a tree, is your only guide. It's a line on a map, a promise of continuity. But for some, this line simply stops. They step onto this trail, into this ancient wilderness, and are never seen again. This isn't just a trail, it's a culture. It's the shared silence at a wooden shelter. The scrolled trail names in a dog-eared logbook. Wandering Star, Peregrine, Stitches. It's a quiet camaraderie built over shared miles and freeze-dried meals. Yet, juxtaposed against this warmth of the cold, sterile pages of missing persons files. Names, dates, last known locations. These files speak of a different kind of silence, Anne. Unnerving emptiness, where a person used to be. Out here, in terrain this vast and rugged, leaving no trace is terrifyingly easy. A sudden downpour can wash away footprints. A gust of wind can scatter a scent. Clues vanish into the earth, as if they were never there. The trail itself is a layered story. Its modern path, carved out by the Civilian Conservation Corps in the 1930s, is just the newest chapter. These footpaths often overlay much older roots game trails, indigenous pathways, forgotten settler roads. It's a place steeped in memory, where history feels present in the very soil beneath your feet. The Cherokee, whose ancestral lands these mountains are, tell stories of the Nunahi, the spirit people who live within the highlands. They are described as helpers, protectors of the lost. But their presence also adds to the forest's profound and unsettling mystique. This folklore exists alongside the gridded maps of search and rescue teams. Two different ways of trying to understand a wilderness that keeps its own secrets. Imagine the mist rising from a thicket of rhododendron, so dense it swallows sound. Hear the faint, distant murmur of water rushing over stones, a sound that could be yards away or miles. Feel the soft tick of cooling metal on a trail sign as the last of the day's warmth bleeds into the evening air. These are the sensory details that fill the space between the known and the unknown. We hear of cases, names whispered around campfires: a hiker who vanished near a well-traveled road, another who disappeared between two shelters just a few miles apart. The official reports offer timelines and search perimeters, but they can't explain the void. They can't fill the empty space. As dusk settles into true night, picture an open-air shelter deep in the woods. Inside, a trail register lies opened on a rough-hewn table. Flipping through the pages, you see entries filled with hope and exhaustion. Tales of rain, sun, and sore feet. But then you notice it. A name, signed in with a flourish, with a stated destination for the next day. You keep turning the pages, scanning the entries for the days that followed. The name never appears again. It's just a blank space, an entry that never signed out, a story that hangs unfinished in the deep quiet of the southern mountains. The wind doesn't howl up here, not on this ridge. It breathes a long, slow exhale of damp earth and decaying leaves that swallows sound whole. One step, then another. The click of a trekking pole on wet granite is the only proof you're still moving forward. This is Blood Mountain, the heart of North Georgia, where the Appalachian Trail truly begins. It's a place of breathtaking beauty, where fog settles in the valleys like a sea of milk and the world feels brand new. Every year, thousands of hopeful hikers stand at Springer Mountain, fueled by optimism and pristine gear. They take their first steps north, dreaming of Katahdin. But the trail has a way of sifting intentions. The first 100 miles are a crucible. The climbs are relentless, the descents punishing on fresh knees. A simple wrong turn down an unmarked side, path that looks just like the main trail can lead you miles astray before you even realize it. The forest is a labyrinth of old logging roads, forgotten homestead clearings, and game trails that braid themselves into the mountainside. It's easy to get turned around. The green tunnel, as they call it, can be disorienting. Every tree looks like the last. Every ridge melts into the next. One moment, you're following the familiar white blaze. The next, you're pushing through a thicket of rhododendron. the trail having vanished behind you. They call these thickets laurel hells for a reason. Once you're inside, the dense, waxy leaves block out the sun and muffle all noise. It's a place where you can shout and the sound goes nowhere. History is layered deep in this soil. Beneath your feet are the ghosts of old wagon roads, used by settlers pushing west. Hidden in the deep coves are the remnants of stone walls and chimneys from farmsteads reclaimed by the forest. These were the paths of their secret routes winding through the darkest hollows, far from the eyes of the law. The modern trail often follows these older ways, a thin line of human passage drawn over centuries of forgotten journeys. It's in these early miles that the first vanishings occur. Sometimes it's a hiker who simply decides the trail is UNT for them and quietly walks away. But other times, it's more unsettling. A neatly packed tent found at a quiet campsite. Gear all in place. Food bag hung properly from a tree branch. But its owner is gone. No note. No sign of a struggle. Just an absence. A space where a person should be. The land itself is an accomplice in these disappearances. A sudden Appalachian downpour can wash away footprints in minutes. Autumn leaves fall, blanketing the forest floor and hiding any trace of passage. The terrain is unforgiving, with steep drop-offs and hidden crevices just a few feet from the path. The forest simply absorbs what it is given. As you push north, crossing into North Carolina, the mountains grow larger, wilder. The Smokies loom on the horizon, bringing with them older stories. Legends whisper out from the west. Tylee's a spearfinger, the stone-skinned spirit who walks the high ridges. Her presence felt in the sudden chill of the air. These aren't campfire stories to explain the unexplainable. They are the atmosphere of the place itself. They are the crows that rise in a silent black cloud from the hemlocks. The eerie quiet of a forest holding its breath. The trail continues to climb. Winding along the spine of the range, the trees grow thicker, the canopy darker. You reach a gap, a saddle between two peaks, and pause. The wind ripples across the open space. A soft, rushing sound. You can hear your own breathing, the beat of your own heart. You might call out a friend's name, someone just 100 yards behind you, but the sound is snatched away, carried off by the breeze, and all that returns is the deep, profound hush of the Blue Ridge. The beam of a headlamp cuts through the pre-dawn gloom, sweeping across a wall of wet rhododendron. This is the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, a place where mist clings to the ridges and silence is a constant companion. Here, along the Appalachian Trail, the line between the known and the unknown is as thin as the morning fog. This isn't just a landscape. For some, it's a place of unanswered questions, home to files that have never been closed. The stories are woven into the very fabric of these mountains. They are told with respect, because behind every name is a family still waiting. Consider Dennis Martin, a 6-year-old boy who vanished in 1969. He was playing a simple game of hide-and-seek with his brother and father near Spencefield, just a short distance from the trail. One moment he was there, planning to surprise his family, and the next, he was gone. A massive search effort, one of the largest in the park's history, found no trace. The terrain itself became a barrier steep, tangled, and unforgiving. Years later, in 1976, another story unfolded. Tranny Gibson, a 16-year-old on a school field trip, disappeared from the trail near Clingman's Dome. She was with a large group of students, walking between two teachers. As the group hiked up toward Andrews Bald, she simply vanished from the line. The trail was busy, yet no one saw her leave it. The search was immediate and intense, but the dense forests and sudden weather changes that characterized the Smokies yielded no answers. Then there's Thelma Melt. In 1981, the 58-year-old was hiking with two friends on Deep Creek Trail. She was ahead of them and, after rounding a bend, was never seen again. Her companions were only a few minutes behind her. The trail was well defined, not particularly strenuous at that point, but the woods swallowed her whole. Searchers faced the same challenges. Steep hollows, where a misstep could be fatal, and dense undergrowth that can hide anything just feet from a path. More recently, in 2012, Derek Lukian's car was found abandoned at the Newfound Gap parking lot. His wallet and a note were inside. Security footage showed him getting out of his vehicle and walking toward the Appalachian Trail. despite extensive searches that covered some of the most rugged terrain in the eastern United States. No definitive sign of him was ever located. To understand why these cases remain unsolved, you have to understand the land itself. The Smokies are not a gentle wilderness. The sunny afternoon can turn into a cold, driving rainstorm in minutes. Temperatures can plummet unexpectedly, creating a life-threatening situation for anyone unprepared. The ground is a maze of steep ravines, or hollows, thick with rhododendron and mountain laurel so dense that line of sight is reduced to mere feet. These thickets can defeat even the most skilled tracking dogs, their scents washed away by frequent rain or confused by the crisscrossing tracks of wildlife and other hikers. A footprint, a dropped item, any potential clue degrades rapidly, erased by the elements in the passage of time. T's powerful, often inscrutable landscape has long inspired folklore. The Cherokee people, who have called this land home for centuries, speak of the Yanwi, Sunzadi, the little people. These beings are said to be protectors of the mountains, sometimes helping those who are lost, but also known to be mischievous, leading people astray if they are not shown proper respect. The name Smoky Mountains itself comes from the blue haze, the gnadali, or blue smoke, that perpetually veils the peaks. It is a poetic description that captures a deeper truth. This is a place that keeps its own counsel, a forest that holds its secrets close. While modern searchers rely on grids, GPS, and technology, these old stories linger, a reminder that some parts of the world remain profoundly wild. We follow the white blazes of the trail, the path winding ever upward. The dense canopy of the lower elevations gives way to forests of fir and spruce, their branches dripping with moisture even on a dry day. The air grows cooler, thinner. The sounds of the forest floor the rustle of leaves. The chatter of a hidden spring are swallowed by the vast quiet. Finally, we break through the tree line, stepping onto the high, wind-brushed grass of a bold. Here, the world opens up. The sky feels impossibly close. A deep and endless blue. Ridges recede into the distance, layer upon layer of hazy blue and purple. The views are breathtaking, but they are also deceptive. From this vantage point, distances seem manageable. The wilderness below looks like a soft, green carpet. But we know better. We know that within that beauty lies a complexity that has baffled and humbled all who have tried to master it. The sun breaks over the spine of Roan Mountain, spilling gold across a landscape that feels like the top of the world. Down below, a sea of cloud stretches to the horizon, swallowing the valleys. Up here, the wind is a constant companion, tugging at the thin walls of a lone tent, a fabric island in an ocean of grass. After the dense, almost claustrophobic forests of the south, this openness feels like a reprieve, a long, deep breath. But there's a deception in all this space. Out here, you'd think you could see forever, but getting lost is impossible. But the Appalachian Trail, a faint brown ribbon through the green, can play tricks on you. The path frays into dozens of smaller trails, braids of beaten earth, left by those who came before. Each one whispering a different direction. A sudden fog bank can roll in without warning, thick and white, erasing the world just a few feet from your face. The horizon itself seems to shift, tilting and blurring until you no longer trust which way is up. It's a different kind of disorientation, not of being closed in, but of being lost in a vast, featureless expanse. This high-altitude world has its own ghosts. It's hard to imagine now, but a grand hotel once stood right here. The Cloudland Hotel. They said it was so large that the state line between North Carolina and Tennessee ran straight through its dining room. You could sit at one end of the table and be in a different state from your dinner companion. A railroad once clawed its way up these slopes, bringing tourists to a resort perched on the edge of the sky. All that's gone now, vanished like a morning mist, leaving only stories and a few foundation stones for the wind to scour. This history hangs in the air, a quiet reminder of how quickly things can disappear. And it's not just buildings. The openness that feels so safe can be a trap. Search and rescue teams will tell you, when the high winds start to howl across these balds, their efforts are severely limited. Helicopters can't fly. Ground crews struggle against gusts that can knock a person off their feet. Sudden storms, born in the valleys below, can race up the slopes, bringing with them lightning and torrential rain. There have been hikers, individuals who were last seen walking into the clouds up here, who simply weren't seen again. Not a trace, not a sign. They stepped into the vastness, and the vastness kept them. These treeless peaks, these bolds, are a geological and botanical mystery. For years, people have debated why they exist. Were they cleared by early settlers for grazing? Are they the result of ancient fires, or a unique climatic condition that keeps the trees at bay? The science is still unsettled, but the folklore, that's another matter entirely. Old tales from the valleys speak of strange lights seen dancing along these ridges at night. Will-o'-the-wisps, they called them, or phantom lanterns, carried by unseen hands. Just folklore, of course. The kind of stories that grow in isolated places. But when you're up here alone, and the light begins to fail, and you see a flicker at the edge of your vision, it's easy to understand how those legends were born. The soundscape here is subtle, tactile, the constant, soft hiss of wind through miles of grass. The sharp, metallic rasp of a zipper as you seal your tent against the coming night. Far below, carried up on the rising thermals of air, you might hear the faint, lonely bark of a dog from a farm you can't even see. It's a reminder that civilization is down there, somewhere, but it feels a world away. As the camera pans, we begin to descend, leaving the wide open sky of the bolds behind. The horizon, once so expansive, starts to close in again. The tall grasses give way to scrub, and then, suddenly, we are back under the canopy of shadowed hardwoods. The light changes, dappling through the leaves. The air grows still and heavy, down here, by a small, gurgling spring. The soft earth has captured a perfect impression of a hiking boot. It's a clear, sharp sign of passage, a marker of a human presence. But you can't help but wonder how long it will last before the next rain washes it away, leaving no trace that anyone was ever here at all. The fire ticks down to embers, a small orange heart beating against the Virginia twilight. Above, the first stars prick the deep blue, and a whippoorwill starts its lonely, looping call from somewhere in the dark woods. All that's left of this old homestead is the stone chimney, a silent monument standing guard over a place someone once called home. We've drifted north, into the long green tunnels of the Appalachian Trail, where every step feels like you're walking deeper into a memory. It's easy to understand how a person can vanish out here. It doesn't always start with a dramatic event. Sometimes, it's just a simple step off the path, a short walk to a stream for water, a moment of privacy sought just beyond the trees, or the tempting promise of a shortcut that turns out to be an old, forgotten logging road leading nowhere. The forest has a way of playing tricks on your sense of time and distance. 10 minutes can feel like an hour, and 100 yards can feel like a mile, when every tree looks the same. Public records tell quiet, unresolved stories of hikers who stepped into these woods and never stepped out. The details are sparse: a last known location, a car left at a trailhead, a final entry in a shelter log. The focus of the searches that follow is always on the maze-like networks of unmarked spurs and game trails that branch off the main corridor. A grid search is organized, a base camp established. Search and rescue teams work for days, following scent trails that eventually grow cold, swallowed by the sheer scale of the wilderness. The map you hold in your hand is a simplified version of reality. It doesn't show every ghost path or every false summit. This land is layered with human history. You can feel it under your feet. Here, a series of overgrown trenches marks a forgotten Civil War skirmish. Over there, a flat clearing with a few gnarled apple trees is all that remains of a mountain homestead. The trail itself is a product of history, sometimes following routes carved out by the Civilian Conservation Corps, rerouted around land that has changed hands a dozen times. Each layer complicates the landscape, adding another wrinkle to the map, another story to the stones. The hillfolk have their own stories, too, whispered around campfires for generations. They talk of the Watcher on the ridge, a spectral figure seen standing motionless among the trees, a guardian or a warning, depending on who's telling the tale. It's folklore, of course, a ghost story, born from the deep woods and the creak of unseen branches, but it speaks to a feeling you get out, hear that you are never truly alone, that the forest itself is observing you. The air grows cooler, damp with the smell of leaf mold and rich earth. In the distance, the low rumble of a freight train is a faint reminder of the world beyond these ridges. The trail climbs steadily, a narrow ribbon winding through the darkness. The trees begin to thin, and through the branches, I can see the first glimmers of artificial light. It's Skyline Drive. The path emerges from the woods and spills onto the soft shoulder of a paved overlook. The night yawns wide and deep over the valley below, a sea of blackness, dotted with distant lights. On the other side of the road, the trail slips quietly back into the trees, continuing its silent journey north. One moment, you're on Skyline Drive, a river of steel and glass flowing through the mountains, car doors slamming at every overlook. The next, you take a single step off the pavement, and the world goes silent. All you hear is the crunch of leaves under your boots and the whisper of wind through the gnarled branches of mountain laurel. It's here, in this sudden quiet, that the true Shenandoah begins. You're walking alongside old stone walls, half crumbled and covered in moss, remnants of farms and lives that existed long before this was a national park. This is the great paradox of Shenandoah. It's one of America's most accessible and popular parks. Yet just a few yards from the road, you can find a solitude so profound it feels like another world entirely. And sometimes, that world keeps its secrets. Over the decades, this beautiful, accessible wilderness has been the backdrop for a number of quiet, unresolved disappearances. These aren't ghost stories. They are documented cases of people who came here and were never seen again. Take, for example, the stories you can find in public records a hiker. Last seen near a young person whose car was found parked at an overlook. Massive search efforts are launched, involving hundreds of volunteers, canine units, and helicopters scouring the rugged terrain. But despite their best efforts, the trail goes cold. It's baffling. How can someone vanish from such a well-traveled place? The answer lies in the park's unique geography. Shenandoah has over 500 miles of trails, with countless access points and unofficial side paths branching off in every direction. A person could easily step off a main trail and become disoriented within minutes. The weather here is famously fickle. A sunny afternoon can turn into a thick, disorienting fog in the blink of an eye. Sudden, violent thunderstorms can roll in over the ridges, washing away tracks and making any search incredibly difficult. These factors create gaps in timelines and complicate witness reports, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. As you walk, you can't help but feel the history under your feet. These mountains weren't always a wilderness. Before the park was created in the 1930s, thousands of people lived here. Their communities were relocated, but they left echoes behind. You see it in the wild apple trees, descendants of forgotten orchards, still bearing fruit. You find it in the small, hidden cemeteries tucked away just off the trail, their headstones weathered and tilted with age. It's a powerful reminder that we are just passing through a landscape that holds countless stories. The local lore only deepens this feeling. Tales of spirits on the Blue Ridge, or the legends surrounding the ancient rock formations of Old Rag and Stony Man, add a layer of mystique. These aren't meant to frighten, but to color the experience. To give voice to the shivery feel when a sudden gust of wind rattles the leaves, or when a red fox darts across the path in the fading light. Park officials often advise visitors to be prepared, to let someone know their plans, and to respect the wildness of the mountains, a quiet acknowledgement of how quickly things can change out here. The trail begins to descend now, leading us down from the high peaks. The air grows heavier, and the scent of damp earth and river water becomes stronger. We're heading toward the Potomac crossings, leaving the rolling Blue Ridge behind for the next leg of the journey. The ground beneath our feet changes. The soft dirt gives way to a clatter of loose, sharp rocks. It's a distinct sound, a percussive crunch and slide with every step, signaling our entry into the long, challenging march through what hikers grimly call rock. The rhythm of stone on stone is the only sound, a steady beat carrying us forward into the unknown. The beam from your headlamp shatters against quartz, 1,000 tiny fractures of light in the Pennsylvania midnight. You cross the Delaware from New Jersey in the pre-dawn quiet, and the change is immediate. The forest doesn't just get darker, it gets heavier. This is a different kind of wild. This is where the Appalachian Trail tests your ankles and your resolve. Welcome to Pennsylvania's rocks and hollows, where clues go to ground and vanish. They call it Roxylvania for a reason. Here, the trail becomes a relentless grind over endless fields of shattered stone, boulder fields, talus slopes that slide under your boots, and a forest floor carpeted in a deep, slick leaf litter that can hide a twisted ankle, or worse. For a hiker, it's a physical challenge. For a searcher, it's a nightmare. A clear set of tracks leading into a boulder field simply disappears, swallowed by a million tons of granite. A scent trail for a canine unit gets scrambled by the crosswinds, whipping through the hollows and the mineral temps of the rock itself. This landscape is riddled with voids. Side hollows branch off the main ridge, each one a miniature wilderness of its own, dipping into shadow and silence. The geology here is ancient and complex. Karst topography means sinkholes can open up, hidden beneath the forest stuff. Old mine shafts from the iron boom of the 19th century scar the land. Their entrances often collapsed or choked with vegetation, creating unseen depths just feet from the marked path. These are places where things, and sometimes people, can disappear without a trace. Drones flying overhead see only a uniform canopy of green. Thermal cameras struggle with the insulating quality of the deep woods and the cool, damp air that pools in these depressions. A map shows you a contour line, but it can't show you the crevice hidden at its base. You'll see the names on the map, echoes of a hard past, places like Dead Woman's Hollow or shades of Death Creek. These aren't clues in any modern investigation. They are cultural echoes, ghost stories left on the landscape by generations who knew its dangers. The folklore runs deep here, too. Tales of phantom campfires seen flickering on a distant ridge, only to vanish when approached. Legends of these stone talkers, spirits said to mimic voices, luring wanderers off the trail. These are just stories, of course, but they speak to a fundamental truth about this place. It plays tricks on the mind and the senses. The scrape of your boot on granite can sound like a footstep behind you. The hoot of an owl can sound like a distant call for help. When the wind suddenly drops, the resulting silence is so profound it feels like the world is holding its breath. This land is a palimpsest, written and rewritten by history. You're not just walking on rock, you're walking on the ghosts of industry. You'll pass the stone ruins of old iron furnaces, silent monuments to a time when these hills glowed with fire day and night. The unnaturally flat areas in the woods, the charcoal flats, are where colliers once lived in huts, slowly burning entire forests to fuel the furnaces. Faint, forgotten roads, once used to haul charcoal and/or diverge from the white blazes of the trail, leading to nowhere you can see on a modern map. These ghost roads and forgotten camps create a confusing network, a shadow trail system that can easily lead a disoriented hiker astray. In the statewide databases, there are names unresolved cases tied to the counties the Appalachian Trail winds through. These are mentioned not as specifics, but as a solemn reminder. The official trail is a well-marked, well-traveled corridor of relative safety, but step just a few hundred yards off that path, into the rocks and hollows, and you are in a different world. A world where the ground itself can confound the most determined search, where the landscape swallows sound, and where the past is so deeply etched it feels present. As you walk, the distant drone of a highway on the valley floor might reach your ears, a brief reminder of the other world. But soon, it fades, replaced once again by the rustle of leaves and the steady, patient silence of the Pennsylvania woods. The rain beads on spruce needles, each drop a tiny lens reflecting the forest's deep green. Here, in the quiet heart of Vermont, two famous paths become one. A weathered white blaze, the sign of the Appalachian Trail, shares a tree trunk with the long trail's faded blue. For over 100 miles, they run together, a shared spine over the Green Mountains. But where they eventually split, history and mystery linger, like the damp chill in the air after a storm. This is the region that holds one of New England's most unsettling stories. On December 1st, 1946, an 18-year-old Bennington College sophomore named Paula Jean Weldon set out for a walk. She was seen by several people on the long trail, heading toward Glastonbury Mountain. She wore a bright red parka, easily visible against the muted tones of the late autumn woods. But as the afternoon faded, Paula Jean Weldon Bunny said. She was never seen again. Her disappearance triggered one of the largest searches in Vermont's history. Thousands of volunteers, police, and even the National Guard scoured the mountains. At the time, law enforcement agencies lacked the coordinated, interstate protocols we have today. There was no central state police force in Vermont, and jurisdiction issues between local, state, and even New York authorities complicated the effort. Information sharing was slow and inefficient, a stark contrast to modern-day search and rescue operations which utilize unified command systems, GPS tracking, and mutual aid agreements that can summon resources from across the country in hours. Paula's case became the haunting centerpiece of what journalists would later call the Bennington Triangle, a term used to describe a cluster of disappearances in the area between 1945 and 1950. While the name is sensational, the stories are real. A year before Paula vanished, 74-year-old Mitty Rivers, an experienced woodsman, disappeared while guiding a hunting party. 3 years after her, a veteran named James Tedford seemingly vanished from a moving bus just before it arrived in Bennington. And in 1950, Attirold Pal Jepsen disappeared from a farm, followed just weeks later by the vanishing of Frida Langer, who slipped and fell in a stream while hiking with her cousin and was never seen again. Of this group only, Frida Langer's remains were ever found, discovered months later, in an area that had been thoroughly searched. The others remain mysteries. The Long Trail itself is the oldest long-distance hiking trail in the United States. Conceived in 1910, the Appalachian Trail, a grander vision, came later, grafting its own route onto the Long Trail's established path through Vermont. For a time, hikers on both journeys share the same footsteps, the same shelters, the same views. They walk a path layered with history, passing old cellar holes nearly reclaimed by the forest. In New England lore, these sunken stone foundations are sometimes seen as thresholds, places where the veil between worlds is thin. You hear tales of the willow, the wisp, strange lights that lead travelers astray, and of whispering bugs that are said to swallow sound and secrets. This shared path is a crossroad, not just of trails, but of destinies. At every junction, a choice is made. Here, a through hiker continues north toward Katahdin. There, another turns, committed to the length of Vermont. It's a place where two journeys run parallel before diverging, where people step onto different paths, heading toward different futures. For some, the path leads to a summit and a clear view. For others, it leads into a shadow that is yet to lift. Now, as we leave the quiet, brooding woods of southern Vermont behind, our compass turns east, toward the Presidential Range. We climb out of the valleys and up onto the high ridges of the White Mountains. The clouds here are different. They don't just hang, they tear across the granite peaks. The way forward looks clear for miles, a thin ribbon of trail etched across the roof of New England, but it is also perilous. Exposed to the sky, with the wind as a constant companion. From the wind-swept ridges of the Whites, we cross into Maine. The trail dips from exposed granite into the muffled world of the 100-mile wilderness. Here, under a dense canopy of fir and spruce, footsteps feel different. Softer, more easily erased. The wind still howls, but it's a filtered sound, carrying spindrift across cairns that mark a path through a sea of green. This is a landscape where the weather doesn't just pass over you. It swallows you whole. We talk about invisible weather, the kind that redefines the trail in minutes. A whiteout isn't just a lack of visibility. It's a complete sensory deprivation, where the ground and sky merge into a single, disorienting void. A sudden temperature crash can turn a damp hiker into a medical emergency, and beneath the deceptively beautiful snow are spruced traps steep, hidden wells around tree trunks, where a misstep can leave you buried and invisible. These aren't just inconveniences. They are factors that drastically complicate search time. A hiker who steps off trail to find shelter from a sudden squall can vanish from the world, their tracks obliterated by the very elements they sought to escape. This reality is etched into the trail's history. In 2013, Geraldine Larguy, known by her trail name Inchworm, was hiking this section of Maine. She stepped off the trail and, despite one of the largest search and rescue operations in the state's history, she was not found. 2 years later, Her remains were discovered in her tent, just a half-hour's walk from the path. It's a somber, factual illustration of how quickly distance, terrain, and a lack of communication can compound. A simple, wrong turn in dense woods, a moment of disorientation, can stretch into an irreversible finality. Her story isn't one of failure, but a stark reminder of the wilderness's unforgiving nature and the razor-thin margin between being on the path and being lost within it. We navigate this terrain today with tools our predecessors could only dream of. The trail itself is a historical document. Early hikers followed cairn lines and blazes chipped into rock and bark. Their maps were hand-drawn, their shelters simple lean-tos, often miles apart. Today, we have meticulously maintained shelters, bog bridges that carry us over saturated ground, and signage at nearly every junction. Our communication has evolved just as dramatically. The paper map, once the sole navigational tool, is now supplemented by GPS devices, personal locator beacons, and satellite messengers that can send an SOS from the deepest woods. Search and rescue command posts coordinate with a precision that turns a sprawling wilderness into a gridded map. Yet even with all this technology, the forest can still hold its secrets. A misread junction, a moment of inattention, can still multiply into miles of desperate searching. As we push north, the terrain grows wilder, the sense of isolation more profound. The calls of loons echo across black, still lakes at dusk. The hollow thud of our boots on bog planks becomes a steady rhythm, a heartbeat in the quiet woods. And with every mile closer to the end, we walk deeper into the lore of this land. We are entering the domain of Pamola, the great spirit of Katahdin. In Penobscot legend, Pamola is the guardian of the Mountain A, powerful, forbidding being with the head of a moose, the body of a man, and the wings of an eagle. He is the bringer of storms, the spirit of the wind and snow. To approach Katahdin is to enter his territory, to ask for passage. This isn't just a quaint myth, it's a cultural expression of the mountain's raw power, a story that instills a necessary reverence for the final, formidable climb. Now, the forest begins to thin. Through the trees, we see Ita dark, brooding mass against the sky. Katahdin. It doesn't rise so much as it looms. A final sentinel at the end of a 2,000-mile journey. We make our last camp at its base, in the stillness of the basin. Above us, the summit stone waits, shrouded in cloud and silence. The air is cold, thin, and heavy with anticipation. We are on the threshold, standing where countless journeys have culminated, listening to the quiet of the mountain before the final ascent. The first light hits Katahdin, painting the ancient stone in shades of rose and gold. The wind, a constant companion on this long journey, whispers through the stunted, twisted trees up here. It feels less like an ending and more like a quiet breath held for a very long time. We've walked hundreds of miles together through stories of disappearances, searching for patterns in the shadows. And patterns do emerge, though they don't form a single, neat picture. We see the unforgiving power of the weather, how a sudden storm can change everything. We see how a simple navigational error, a misread map or a missed blaze, can lead someone miles off course into unforgiving terrain. We've acknowledged the sudden, devastating impact of a health crisis, a heart attack or a fall, miles from any help. And yes, in rare, tragic instances, we must consider the possibility of foul play. But the most haunting truth, the one that sits heaviest in the silence, is that sometimes people simply vanish without a trace. The trail doesn't always give back what it takes. Behind every name we've spoken is a family, a community of friends, whose world is suspended in a state of unknowing. Their ache is a constant hum beneath the surface of everyday life. And then there are the search and rescue teams, volunteers, and professionals who dedicate countless hours, pushing through dense brush and unforgiving weather, driven by a profound commitment to bring someone home. Their work is a testament to human compassion in the face of nature's indifference. The wilderness resists easy endings, and we must learn to sit with the discomfort of unanswered questions. It's in the space of not knowing that folklore finds its roots. The stories we've touched on the Nunahi, the spirit people who might guide or mislead. The formidable spirit of Pamola watching from these very heights. They aren't explanations. They are a cultural mirror, reflecting our deep-seated human need to give a name to the vast, mysterious, unknown. They are stories we tell ourselves to make sense of a world that often doesn't. These figures fade back into the landscape now. Images on a distant ridge. A reminder that some things are meant to be felt rather than understood. The Appalachian Trail itself is not a static thing. It is constantly evolving. Sections are rerouted for conservation or safety. New shelters are built. Old blazes are repainted. Technology like GPS and personal locator beacons offers a safety net that did not exist for hikers even a decade ago. Yet, despite all these advancements, the most essential tool in any hiker's kit remains humility. It's the humility to recognize the power of the wilderness, to respect its dangers, to know your own limits, and to have the wisdom to turn back. This trail has taught generations of hikers that lesson, and it's a lesson that endures. As we stand here, at the symbolic end of the trail, the journey doesn't truly conclude. The stories of the missing continue, and our responsibility to them doesn't end with a final step. It continues in how we remember them and in how we act. It's about creating a community of care that extends beyond the trailhead. So, as we close this chapter, I ask you to carry this forward. Thank you so much for walking this path with me. If these stories have moved you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more thoughtful explorations. More importantly, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's continue the conversation with respect and compassion. Consider sharing verified information about long-term missing hikers to keep their stories alive. Support your local search and rescue teams and the trail organizations that work tirelessly to maintain these wild places. And finally, a gentle reminder for all of us who love the backcountry. Be prepared. Know your route, and always let someone know where you're going and when you expect to be back. The quiet between our footsteps is beautiful, but it's the connection back home that keeps us safe. Thank you.